Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show speaks for itself and it speaks for the interviewee. The title of the show is Iconology, 2010 and Beyond, Kelan, Cohran.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelan, Cohran.
I always like to be on your show.
And I always like to have you, and I don't want to start somewhere because I want you to start. I want you to, there's so much that you have to share, and I don't want to waste time asking trivial questions, so go ahead.
Well, right now we're in I was thinking about Kwanza celebrations that started 40 years ago at Malcolm X. Really didn't start at Malcolm X. There were two teachers at Malcolm X, Bobby Butler, Robert Butler, PhD, and myself. I was a music teacher and he's a sociology teacher, and Brother Hannibal Afrique. And they were working, the two Hannibals were working with gangs in Douglas Park, and they decided to have a Kwanza celebration. And Bobby Butler had been in, he got his PhD at UCLA, and he had celebrated Kwanza with Karinga there in LA. And so he decided to use a Kwanza celebration as his format to touch the gangs in Douglas Park. And so there was, I don't remember, it was maybe 14 or 15 youngsters and the three of us. And we went through a thing. All I can remember was peanuts and some fruit. It was new to me then. But then the next year, in 70, that was 69, after Fred Hampton had been assassinated. And the next year, they had a big celebration on Roosevelt Road in Kedzie. I don't remember the name of the place, but there were, quite a few people there, maybe 200-300 or something. And the next year, in 71, it was about 1,500 people, and it just kept growing till they had to restrict the places where the people go because they didn't have facilities to handle all those people. But it just started growing. And it's my belief, I don't know, I can't prove it, but I don't think that if it hadn't taken off in Chicago, it wouldn't have reached the prominence that it did in the rest of the nation. Because we were actually, the vanguard of the Black Conscious movement was here in Chicago in 1960s. And so I think that that's why that the Kwanza celebrations are so strong here, because we see second and in some cases third generations performing now for Kwanza celebrations.
In fact, my theme song, Moja, comes from the Seven Principles
Yes.
CD by Kwame Steve Cobb and Chavanduka. And they have been gracious enough to let me use that for my theme song for quite a while.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm great for it because it is such inspiring music. It's so meaningful, and it says exactly what I want to say.
All music should be like that. You see, what we call conscious music came out of Chicago. I'm one of the people who started conscious music because I didn't want to perform popular music or to please anybody. I wanted my music all reflect what I've learned. And so I use music as a means of communicating what I've learned. So I think that this was the thing that we put on the rest of the music industry, because they were playing love songs and all kind of stupid stuff, and we came along talking about being black and being proud of our heritage and being African and things like that. And so then eventually, after several years, James Brown came out with I'm Black and I'm Proud, and a few other artists here in Chicago made some type of statements like that. But not only did the music reflect consciousness, I used a different form of music, just like I was playing on the harp. I played a modal concept, which the modal concept is the original concept of music. That is, that each note is like a family member, like the family of stars, the 5 planets and the sun and the moon represent 7 stars in the cosmos. So in early wisdom, the 7 was the number of the cosmos. And so we have 7-note modes. That's the most popular, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That mode was, I know, came from Ethiopia. And it was transferred to Greek, and they identified as the Greek modes. But the Greeks did not discover those modes. The Greeks, all the Greek philosophers attended Kemet. And they got Herodotus, Pythagoras, Plato, all of them visited and went to the mystery schools in Kemet. And so they got the real knowledge about the inner workings of things, or the parallel harmony between the cosmos and earth endeavor. So this is where the music that I researched, I just adopted the older principles of my ancestors. And I was very fortunate. I didn't know what I was doing in front, but it sounded good to me. And I used to put modes on my francophone, and I'd walk all over Chicago playing them. It'd actually get me high. Just playing the modes, I'd get home, and sometimes the modes were so good, I'd have to play them for several days, And I realized a little later on that the type of music I was playing was kind of hypnotic and like narcotics. Plato does an extensive work on the effect that music has on people. And he showed where the Greek modes represented the difference in the Greek people. And there were certain instruments that certain modes could be played on, and then other instruments you couldn't play on that mode. For instance, the flute would get you in trouble playing certain modes.
Really?
Yeah, because of the sound and the sound's relationship to the body and the mind. And we find that the mind is very highly influenced by the sound of notes and the relationship of notes. And so there's a cosmic relationship of all things that has existed. You know, it's cosmic law. And the music of ancients was drawn from those cosmic laws. So what we've come down to is a time when they threw all the laws out the book and deal with just being earth people, see. And so we have what is called a chromatic scale, a 12-tone equal scale. And it's not equal. It's impossible to get to equalize a scale from one note to its octave, because as the note goes up, it increases in frequencies. And so you don't have, if the frequency was the same, maybe you could split it up into 12 equal parts. But you can't do it because it's of the increase. And it's off. And even if it was on, it would still be incorrect because it does not align up with the parts of the body. You have 7 chakras in your body. Well, the ancients knew that there were centers in your body that respond to cosmic energy. And your brain certainly is a prisoner to cosmic radiation, because that's one of the reasons your skull is as thick as it is. And you have the meninges, the fluid that flows underneath your skull, and throughout all of your neocortex, that meninges has electromagnetic particles in it, indicating that it's being stimulated from cosmic radiation. And so then where does your pineal gland sit? Right in the center of the meninges. And so your pineal gland regulates your repair system. I mean, it's really your key spot in your brains. And we know that by me studying the body and studying musicology and studying history and astronomy, they all really represent one thing, is the knowledge of the ancient mystery schools. Now, I don't pretend to know what they taught then, but I do know some of the principles. I have been able to, over 48 years, piece together various principles of mathematics and music and the whole astronomy. All of it is related, and the body. So during the, if you remember, down in Dallas, I don't know, you may not have gone to Dallas, but I introduced the universal pitch to people. I should have brought it today so people could hear the universal pitch, but 256 cycles per second. And that's the universal pitch. And that universal pitch is between a man and a woman's voice. A man can start, ah, and that's high for a man. Ah, that's comfortable. That's an octave low. That's 128 cycles per second. But a woman can go from here up to there, and it's comfortable for her. So the universal pitch is exactly between a man and a woman's voice. Otherwise, we are cosmic people, you understand? Just by virtue of our voice. Now, put together with that the fact that we sang before we spoke, then singing was our original language, song, and was based on cosmic alignment of notes. The relationships, the forms, and the rhythms were all part of cosmic relationships that people with knowledge could draw up in meditation or in the various states that they go to get the secret knowledge. For instance, we all know about the Australian Aborigine. He lives in dream time. He goes into dream time every day. That's all he ever did. You know, he never worked. His food was, he figured out how to get his food without doing anything, but just going to where it was and eating, you know, so that most of his time was spent going into dream time, and they would get together and had rituals that they could go over into the other world and exist there. And that's where the pure knowledge is, because there are no misconceptions or no inconsistencies over in that world. These are the things that I studied, and I've tried to, enrich my students with this, but it actually takes a whole movement in order to bring in the proper music. But I would like to say that I was in Italy on December the 13th, and it's the funny thing, the way life plays out. I've had so many odd things happen to me in the last 48 years since I've been on this path. And I guess the oddest of all was when I got to Milan, Italy, they had a radio disc jockey who was a fan of mine, and he wanted to interview me, and he asked permission. I said, well, okay, the night before our performance. And I said, okay, and lo and behold, he asked some very enlightening questions, and I put some of the history on him, and I went into the history of how the music had been changed from cosmic music into this other stuff. And I showed where Galileo, who was the father of science, had a hand in it. And so naturally they draw pride from Galileo. That's the pinnacle of Italian representation, in science and arts. But actually, I was searching for some old choral music one time, back years ago, and I stumbled upon a choral piece that said Negro Assum. I said, wow, what is this? Black is great. Now this is I looked down there, this man is the Kapellmeister of St. Mark Cathedral, which was the greatest cathedral in the European world at that time. And he was the Kapellmeister, or the master that wrote all the songs and conducted the music. And he was there for 25 years at St. Mark Cathedral. Now, if you've been to Venice, and Venice is supposed to be the most beautiful city in the world, and St. Mark Cathedral is the pinnacle of that beauty. And it sits right there in the face of the Grand Canal in Venice. In Venice, they don't have any streets, they have canals. Mm-hmm. And so he was the Kapellmeister at that place for 25 years. And he was the last great teacher of the proper music, or the cosmic music. His name was Giuseppe Zarlino. And it was his book, The Principles of Harmony, that Bach almost went blind reading. But it was Vincenzo Galileo Galilei's father, who was a student of Zarlino, and he decided to challenge Zarlino's premise that the music should be related to cosmic energies. And he built up an argument and used his 17 or 18-year-old son to help him produce his arguments against his teacher. And that's how Galileo got into science, trying to disprove the fact that the music didn't have to be related to the cosmos. And so that was the last of the cosmic music until Sun Ra. Best I know, when Sun Ra came along, he was reaching into his ancestry for the cosmic thing. And that's all that's there in our ancestry. You go to any of the ancient people, and they all are there. You go to the American Indian powwow now out in Arizona, and you get this one sound, yeah, when you go on the grounds, everybody's into it. That's cosmic music. They're dealing with cosmic relationships, whether they know it or not, or whether they understand it or not. That's what they're doing. And so my music, all these years, have been straddled between trying to play what people know to make a living, and then put my stuff out there to trying to help change it. And so I'm happy to say that I have been able to affect some change on the music, although I haven't got any credit for it, but the music is changing quite a bit. What we call world music now is based on that, because when you go to the music of China, the music of Turkey, the music of Argentina, the music of Venezuela, anywhere, they have an ancestral root in their music that is related to cosmos. So the music that I'm playing relates to people all over the world. It always did. And therefore, when my album On the Beach came out in 2002, now people in Chicago knew about me all along, but no one knew in the rest of the world. And so when On the Beach came out in 2002, people heard cosmic music other than Sun Ra. for the first time. And so I've been gaining fans ever since then. Then the Malcolm X album, oh man, I couldn't believe that, because it was so, I thought it was negative. Malcolm X's name couldn't even be spoken around here for a while. You know, I say shortly after his assassination, I'll say up till about 80. It wasn't until the youngsters put the X on their cap that they began to defy authorities, more or less, or the general cultural conceptions, to put Malcolm out there on the table. But there was no Malcolm in the 70s. You can't find any reference to it, you know. But the autobiography of Malcolm X is the purest form of American culture that I've ever been exposed to, because he told the truth of how he grew up. And you can see in there how we are induced into the corrupt world that we live in. But he saw that and got out of it, and then tried to teach and help people remove themselves from this corrupt cocoon that we are born in. And that's what my, more or less, projections are, to try to help people understand how to get out of the corrupt cocoon that we are born in. Now, I want to explain that because it's all related to us going into our ancestry and discovering a self that has nothing to do with the modern society we live in, except that, you know, the two are connected by blood. But when they brought us here as slaves, we had cosmic music. We had cosmic alignment. There may have been other things that we didn't have, but whatever it was, we had the root. And so our music right today, those spirituals that the slaves sang, is the root of everything that's going on in the entertainment industry here in America and around the world now. Because it came out of our songs. Our forms, the AAB, those different forms we had were not the same as the classical forms. The blues form, the 12-bar blues, to make anybody pat their feet, you know. They have nothing to do with any of the music that was out here before the slaves got here, see. And so out of that body of music and those cosmic relationships, because they were singing, they didn't have pianos, they didn't have tuning devices that other people use. They sang from their spirit, from their heart. And that brought about the exact alignment, cosmic alignment of the notes. So when you listen to spirituals, you're listening to the most powerful music that the human family ever produced. But we didn't know it. And so because it was attached to slavery, it had a bad connotation. So, you know, we want to get away from that. And we still don't have anyone singing spirituals now. And that's all you have to do, really, to line up, is to get deep off into that first music and find out what they were saying, feel them, become a part of them, and you realize who you are. Now, the slaves that were brought here were from every nation. All kind of countries and tribes contributed to the store of the slave body, but they had that native music, and so all of these different tribes came here and settled on one music. Now, why would they settle on one music? It was because that music was so old that it was the music that was before they split up into the various divisions. And so the oldest and the strongest music is what was given to us by the slaves.
You know, that answers at least one question that I have and raises another one. The question that it answers for me is in terms of what it was that enabled us to continue to regroup. Because as you know, when they put captives on those ships,
Yes.
they put them from different language groups so they couldn't communicate.
Right.
And consequently, and then of course they took them first of all to the islands,
Cohran places, yeah.
right, and broke them because they were captives, they were not slaves
That's
yet,
right.
and so they took them and put them through the seasoning process in order to convert them
Right.
into slaves.
Yes.
and the division continued. Every time an alliance was formed, that alliance was broken up either through the sale or through some other way.
Splitting
They
families
always split people up who seemed to have an affinity, but somehow we always kept coming back together. So the thing that you've just made me understand is that root, that common cultural root found in the music could help us to identify ourselves among each other, no matter what subdivision, nation, tribe, or whatever fragment came from the whole. We knew the whole.
We knew the whole.
We knew the whole.
We would respond to it, even if we didn't know it. We would respond. Let me give you an example. I've played weddings where they have the family of the bride on one side of the room and the family of the groom on the other side of the room. And I'm performing, you know, and everybody's kind of stiff because they don't know each other, you know, they're sitting around waiting. And so I said, well, I know where to get them. I play some blues, and everybody get into it. Immediately, everybody responds to the blues. Same way, recognize it's just one people. We all got the same feelings. Now, it goes a lot deeper than that. I mean, I don't know if I could break that down on this program, but I define all things as spin, that the smallest entity in existence is a spin. And there are two spins in the principle of duality. Man spins one way, woman spins another. Together they are everything. The largest things in existence, galaxies, spin. And so all in between are various types of spin. All of this equipment here is subject to spin. The most powerful things in our society spin. And I define, for instance, like in heat, the faster something spins, the hotter it gets. The slower it spins, the colder it is. That's why we have refrigerators, so we can cool the spin down in our food, because it deteriorates from the spin that's going on in it. You follow? All right, understanding that spin, then there is a frequency that we spin at, and that identifies us. That identifies animals. They know the frequency that they spin at. They can recognize you way off. You know, there's a frequency, for instance, like when the elephant goes into a struce and is in heat, you know, and gives off this big sound. All the elephants from miles around come running to the elephant because of that spin. I'm saying that there's a spin in us that we identify with, even though we might not even be conscious of it. We identify there's a commonality in us according to that spin, that we spin on the same frequency. No matter where we came from, if we got that blood, we got the spin. And that's what makes our music and our sports and all the things we do so powerful. It is the spin, the frequency that we spin at, and the communication that we have. You take a basketball player, knows exactly when to lob the ball up so the other player can make a dunk. You know, that's all coordinated timing. It's deep, but it's got a spin in it, and one knows when the other's going to do what he's going to do. You hear what I'm saying?
I understand that.
And there are people without spin. Now, those people are very abusive because they do things that abuse you. It abuses spin, and they don't know what it is. For instance, there are a lot of ads that come on TV, you know, or on the radio. They're very offensive because they don't have any spin in them. If the spin is in the ad, it's cool. You understand what I'm saying? And it is this spin, the frequency that we spin at, that gives us our power, because we are at least 5 million years old. There are some people who say there's much more, and the anthropologists are digging. But I don't go by anthropologists' accounts of what's happening. I go by other means that are the evidence of our existence. Is there in many forms. It's in the rocks structure. It's even in the cosmos. The cycles of the cosmos repeat over and over and over and over. So we know we've been repeating a long, long time. And I have evidence that the music that came from the Ethiopians, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, that that song or that scale actually is at least 103,000 years old. And I can prove it by showing the frequency of each note is mathematically, I say, biodegradable with the cosmic cycle. Every note in our scale. Now, when you change the notes, now that's 432A. Oh, this is a lot I have to explain. Europeans got together, I think in the 1920s, and decided to have one A, one tuning for A, and they decided that it would be 440. And then they put their chromatic scale out here. Well, actually, the old tuning is 432, and that's the tuning that Plato and all of them were privy to. And that breaks down into mathematics and into music as related to the cosmos. And that's what they were about, having cosmic sounds go down. They didn't realize, I don't think, how much the body was affected by that, but they used it anyway. And now that we're into healing music, and I see they got all kind of professors and all kind of crap going on about healing people with music. We've been healing music all along. That's what we use from day one. We've always used music for healing. You take the grandma in the kitchen ironing her clothes. You know, music all day, because there was a time when we sang. We had a song for every part of our day. And all the animals in our environment were held more or less sustained by that song that we sang. And it's still active today in the Congo Ituri forest. The bonobo monkeys and the Twa, the pygmies, they call them pygmies, of that Ituri forest, sing songs out of their bodies. They sing body songs. And those songs paralyze all of the animals in their environment, all these vicious snakes. Anybody else follow them in there, get wiped out. So there is this connection that comes down from ancient times of the power of song. And this is what has been abused ever since we got into this Galileo changing Zarlino's concept. And it comes down to today is just nothing but abuse. And the music is it's abominable, really. And a fella asked me when I was coming in, "You like, what kind of music you like?" I said, "I don't like anything on radio." Mm-hmm. Although I'm sure they play a lot of good music over there. And people have been taught to like it, just like I was taught to like it. I came to Chicago to become a classical composer. And I stumbled into folk music. Hallelujah. You know, and I found out that the folk music was far more extensive, but it was creative, and so it had spin. It had a lot of spin. And classical music, I could only get a spin a little here and there, very little spin in the classical music.
I may have a rhetorical question here. It may not have an answer, but I'm thinking about our relationship to music, our primordial relationship to music, and thinking that perhaps it was because we sang spirituals and because we brought harmony to the era of chattel slavery on the plantation. It may have modified some of the abuse that we suffered, because certainly we were dealing with ruthless people whose avarice was unparalleled in the world, and consequently there would be no lengths to which they would go to satisfy their greed or appetite for money. So perhaps we may have soothed the savage beast to say.
Well, that's what it was, a heathen. See, and a heathen means that there are no sensitivities. You know, they just have basic needs that they satisfy. And that's what the slave owners were about, basic needs, making money, you know, having sex, just basic needs that they were trying to satisfy.
Satisfying aggression.
Yeah, and the singing, I think, fascinated. In fact, I'm more than certain it fascinated them but I don't know if they understood how to relate to it because it wasn't in any of their previous lives.
Maybe it served as a distraction, if nothing more than a distraction, just to keep them from constantly focusing on ways to destroy us as individuals and as people.
It might have been, but I do know that they did not understand the power of music because they were not, they didn't have any preparation for that. And so they allowed the slaves to sing. And that was the biggest mistake they made because it was the song that held us together. It was the song that was our umbilical cord to 5 million years. That was our inner consciousness, our eternity. It was all in the song. And so we were able to live basically in I say a spiritual world where our physical world had almost collapsed.
It's a cultural anchor.
Right.
That
holds us down. That's it. And so that's why I like to come on and put these ideas out there to music students, because various young people now, they're going to study music, and all the music teachers, they don't have the slightest clue of what's going on about music, really.
Well, they're using so many artificial objects to create music,
they
synthesizers.
Copy. It's copy.
You don't really have to understand much about music to be able to, you know, turn on some automatic machine and set in different kinds of instruments and it produce sound.
Well, it's the people that make those instruments. They don't have the knowledge. And they listen to people like me and researchers around the world maybe, and they get as much information as they can because they want to be advanced. They want to be ahead of everybody. But you can't be ahead of anybody unless you're ahead of them in your soul. You see, and so it's what we draw from inwardly that makes us as musicians and artists and people. It's what we draw from within. See, we are taught, we go to school, you get a PhD, and sometimes some PhDs out there are stupid, you know. They just do know one thing. They've been taught a whole lot of this, and they don't really know the rest.
They don't know how it fits into a grander scheme.
The whole, right. And so a person can only be whole when they are balanced with the outer world and the inner world. And that inner world requires a lot of private time and a lot of honesty with yourself, that you can explore your ancestry inwardly. And then you can produce things that no one has ever seen because you have privy to your ancestry. That's where I play the harp. I play the harp that David played. This is what David played for Saul. He had different tunings. I have my own tuning. I settled on this tuning back in 1967, I think. And so most of my songs are tuned specifically for certain effects that I discovered while playing the francophone. And so I use this tuning on the harp to reflect the wholeness of all of the tribes. And I'm sure that David, with whatever tuning he used the same picking style. See, most of you see classical harps, they play with several fingers, all taking each note one at a time. They learn to do that. But I pick with my fingers, and the harp is completely perfect rhythmic. You have to have perfect rhythm because that's the cosmos. You can't relate to the cosmos without perfect rhythm. And it's not something that you can guess upon. It's something you have to work for. Very few people have it because they don't know it's important. And so you have to have perfect rhythm. You have to have cosmic forms. There are all kind of cosmic forms, but you have to be related to something. And I think I can explain it better if you're a painter and you use a color mixture that's not in nature, then you're violating nature, because nature flows in a specific order. The colors of nature are in a specific order. So when you get outside of that color, you're getting outside of natural law. And that's the way it is in music. They're outside of natural law because they're outside of the forms, they're outside of the rhythms, and they're outside of the tunings. That's what the music is. And so it's not going to deliver people that much. You notice the church music is about the strongest thing we got here because that come down from the old spiritual time.
You know, I was I listen to radio sometimes when I'm in the car, and there was a program on which the question was asked, do we really still need the Negro National Anthem? And, you know, that was so startling to me because I think that we have people, and perhaps not a few of them, who do not think there is any necessity for relating to the ancient culture, to the source from which we came. Somehow they think we've outgrown it.
That's the effect.
I'm very concerned about
I'd like to
debate.
explain that to you if I can, because you see the effect of the 60s in Chicago. We sent black culture all over the world. The natural. Why did we wear the natural? We were proud of our natural hair. I'm not going to be ashamed of this. Something that God gave me is good. And so I took my hat off and started wearing natural. I stopped going to the barbershop and getting it cut, you know. Up to that time, everybody was getting their hair cut every 2 weeks. I said, no good. No, I'm proud of my hair, so I let it grow out. Kids laughed at me and everything, but no matter how much we went through, all during the 60s, a lot of families were in conflict over the hair alone. Just one little factor, not to mention our long feet, our big butts, and a whole lot of other things, you know. But that culture was set in motion here in Chicago, and it spread like wildfire all over the country. And so there were people whose concerns were different, who sent folks in here into our environment to turn that around, to reverse it. And that's the process that we're in now. We've been going through this reversal process since 1970. You see? Because, for instance, I can give you a good example. How many times you hear about the Afro Arts Theater anywhere except among some people or friends?
Not ever.
But yet we had 2,000 people in the audience. And
I was one of them.
And I've sent 3 albums out there that's tops on the charts. That was recorded in that theater. The best band in the country. Why isn't there a mention of that theater or that band? None.
So they're rewinding the tape.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there was a conscious effort to bring people in positions of authority in our environment to reverse this trend that we were sending consciousness out to the country and to the world. That's what we've been going through. And so as one of the progenitors of the cultural thrust, I've had a lot of heat. Being able, in some cases, not even to work. I went through long spells where I couldn't play anywhere.
That's disgraceful.
No, that's America.
Okay.
That's Chicago. See, it's just turned out like that. I'll give you another example. When I came to Chicago in 1953, I told you about this before, there were 2,000 musicians working out of the old black union at 39th and State. And the leaders of that union were the most influential people in the International Music Union. And so they were big people. I'm thinking about Harry Gray and Mr. Samuels, and you can't think of Captain Diet. See, they were big people all over the world because they had done so much to set up conditions for musicians where they could work and flourish. And that was attacked through the city council and brought down through license fees, just like the fees have been going up here lately, you know. See, those fees cut off the musicians, and you look up now, and I don't know how many musicians you got working on the South Side 7 days a week. None. You don't have any working 1 day a week over there. All you have is set engagements. Every once over here, once over there, once over there. No consecutive nothing. Nowhere you can go and nowhere you're going to go and hear the same person every time, except maybe like Buddy Guy downtown or somebody that's been selected to represent a certain thing. But nothing on the South Side, nothing in Bronzeville, nothing in Hyde Park, nothing anywhere on the South Side. And I came to Chicago because I was in St. Louis where the gigs were few and far between. All I could work was East St. Louis. And that was blues, up and down, you know. I couldn't spend my life in the blues. And so I came to Chicago to work, and I saw it decrease just steadily into down to what it is. And that's how we formed the AACM back in '65. We refused to accept the fact that since no one will hire us, let's hire ourselves. And eventually they took that over and took it somewhere else. So it's not doing the job that we started out to solve. And we are, at this time now, in a bad period of music, the worst period that music has ever gone through. Because without the good music, there's an example, the bad music flourished. I mean, it's rampant everywhere. I have to listen to crap on the TV. I listen to the news, and every morning they got some group on there that needs a short stick whooping, you know, with knots on it. But I'd have to turn the TV off because I don't want to hear that. And I know exactly why they promote this music on Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 5, Channel 2. You know, they promoting music they won't hear, but it's not music to me of any value.
There is toxic music in our environment.
There we go. And
that actually is poisonous. It's not just music that you don't want to hear because it doesn't resonate with you or you don't like it.
No,
but it's actually music that affects you in adverse ways. Yes.
That's right. And so that's what I've spent my time in the Melanin conferences, dealing with the toxicity in music and how we could change. But I thought if I had a little impact on some scholars who write books and do research, but I don't think I had any effect at all on the music, except maybe some people who listen to what I do and copy that, but they don't know what they're copying.
Well, it matters. Your motive matters. Your interest in music. If your interest in music is particularly to make a living, if music is your gig.
Well, I have to make a living at it.
But I'm saying if that's your primary motivation, is what can I do with this music? How can I pimp this music? You know, how can I make the most money out of this music? Then you're going to lose the real value of the music.
Well, you know what I came up with? The records of the recordings we made. See, during the 60s, we were able to do what we wanted to. And I had a recorder there, and I recorded all of it. And so now that's what's selling. I just left Milan, Italy, like I said, and they were wiped out by Malcolm X and On the Beach. I didn't tell you, the guy that did the radio interview on me went home that night. It's over an hour interview and wrote it all up in Italiano and put it in the program booklet. So when the people came to the program next day, they knew who they were listening to.
Really?
Yeah, and now it's on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, they've translated it into English and put it on YouTube.
I'm so proud.
But that's the type of way things happen.
So
you know, you can't plan that and you can't make it happen. It just happens because you're in a certain position.
But you have been in the right place for a very, very long time.
Well, the rest of the nation wasn't in the right place, so we didn't match up.
But I can tell you, for one thing, I just see, it seems to me that you are looking better than you have for a long time. So there must be some new energy that's coming in that is invigorating you because you look so well.
That's cosmic, you see.
Okay.
That's cosmic. You see, when people really discover the true meaning of life, because we out here struggling, trying to exist. We got people who exploit us and use us, cheap labor and all kind of devices that keep us skipping, and we can't really concentrate on life itself. But when we get down to the factor of life itself, then we have to identify with our eternity. This present life is only one part of us. The eternal life is the other part. And this part that we are sitting here experiencing now is given to us so that we can add on or subtract from that eternity. And so if we are conscious of our eternity, then we realize how important it is to go back and how important it is to think ahead, because we're not in just one state. We're in motion. See, and there are people. Some of the ideas get by me because of my age, you know, and I always tell people I'll be 83 May the 8th.
Really?
Yeah. They say, well, don't say that, because you could, you could get away being in your 50s, man. That's exactly what I'm talking about, the corruptness. You know what I mean? You'd rather lie to get over, have some advantage or something. No, I don't want no advantage or nothing. I'm proud of my age, you know, because to me, I think that I changed my life in 1961. I changed from being just scrapping around to trying to put the pieces together. And I was fortunate, just like that interview in the land. I make one step, something else happen over here, make another step. And so I've been making steps for 48 years. And I think that's what it is. I feel that I'm really only 48.
Okay. That's true.
Because I was reborn then. And it didn't have nothing to do hardly with the life before then, except that I had studied, starting with singing in grade school in Mississippi. But the life, the eternal life, is the life that I became conscious of. And so you can get answers there that nobody else has but you. And I've been trying to teach people that each one of us, and especially our little children, should know that. These brothers going around shooting each other, you know, and having these gang fights for thrills and all of that, you know, dealing with all of the drugs and things. They don't realize that life, when they took their first breath, gave them everything they need. They've got the whole package. And they are billionaires, they are millionaires, and there are all kind of people of substance that would give everything they have to be one little black baby. You understand me? Because the whole package is in that baby. It doesn't matter the circumstances, and he might be in a shelter, he might be living in his car or whatever, you know, but the package is in the blood. And it's come down from millions of years ago, uninterrupted. And that's disturbing to people who would claim to be superior or anything like that, because it's not about superiority, it's about reality. And reality is that all the people came out of Africans, and the Africans still got what they had when they left. You follow me? So there's that connect that's there. But because we had to be used for other people's labor, then there's a great movement to block that consciousness, or to bring this up and wash it out and clean it up, and then let's go forward into the future with truth and reality. There are many oppositions to that concept. They don't think that the American public can stand the truth. There would be suicides and all kind of calamities if the truth was laid out here. Now, let's go back to the history. That's where the biggest thing is, the history. If you go, when I went to the Indian community, they went through their old tradition.
You mean the natives, the indigenous people here?
They went through, they started back, they sat down, got real relaxed, then they started pulling on the memory, and they were going back. I had to stop them when they got to the 1600s. I had to stop them because I had enough. All I wanted was when DuSable came here. But then I've seen that. I know that exists in Africa throughout. They have the oral tradition, you know. You learn your family's history first, because when you're a little baby, even when you're in the womb, you can hear that history being recited. See, and it's recited over and over at every gathering. And so the most important thing a person has to know is who they are and where they come from and what it means to be that. So that's what was cut off from the slave. He's nothing but a slave. And when you think back, that's all you can reach is a slave. The door is blocked beyond that. So the history is all wrong. The history of science is wrong. The history of agriculture is wrong. The history of mathematics is wrong. The history of astronomy is wrong. The history, period, is wrong, because they lied in the 15, 16, 1700s to make a white superiority group in Europe. They give all the credit. You pick up any book on any science, and all they mention are the Europeans.
We have 3 minutes.
Well, that's all I need. I've said what I wanted to say.
Well, I wanted to know if you were going to grace us with some music.
I'll play another piece, and I'll explain it since I was talking about the modes. Is that I'm playing forms, and these forms are cosmic forms, and so if you listen, you'll hear dual forms going on. That's what I like that most. I believe that my ancestors, whoever I was at one time, really enjoy listening to two things simultaneously. And so I play a music that's two-sided. Sometimes it gets three-sided. You can hear three separate things going on while I'm playing. And I wanted to explain that. That's cosmic music.